The harems mentioned in literature and pop culture give us an image of well-dressed, beautiful women adorned with rice fabrics and jewelry serving the man owning the harem. The harems were the female living quarters in the households of the richest landowners and nobles who could afford to hold and adorn that many wives, concubines, and female slaves. It is a fantasy of luxury and lust with a number of women that are beautifully jeweled and well taken care of, serving the desires of one man whom they hold dearest. However, such an ideal life scenario, not the case for the concubines of the Chinese emperor's harem. In China, the status of a man was once measured by the number of women he had, both wives and concubines. The tradition of the concubine may be the subject of many a male fantasy, but for the young girls, it means living in seclusion, despair, and faint hope, waiting on, and for the man, in a state of total dependence. The life of a girl has never been easy in China. The Forbidden City, situated in the heart of the capital city of Beijing, was the imperial political and ritualistic center of Imperial China for over 5 centuries. It was the palace of the divine Chinese emperors and so forth, considered as the center of the universe. It was known as Forbidden City as it was forbidden for any Chinese civilian to enter the palace. The only inhabitants were the emperor, his family, his wives, concubines, and their maids, as well as the League of UNHEARD. Another interesting reason that it was known as the Forbidden City was that it was forbidden especially to any men to step foot within the confines of the palace city. The only males in the complex were the emperor, his sons, and the League of UNHEARD. One had to be castrated to gain entry to serve in the Forbidden City. The palace was not just the royal living quarters. It was the infamous Chinese Imperial Harem. The Chinese name for the harem was the rear palace. The early laws stated that the Chinese emperor could have up to 4 official wives, each denoting the divine directions, namely north, south, east, and west, and the emperor in the center, creating perfect harmony. However, keeping the bloodline running was given utmost importance, and the emperor had numerous secondary wives or concubines to ensure the procreation of a divine offspring. It was noted as the concubines denote all the other directions of the expanse of the world other than the 4 divine directions. There was an established hierarchy and pecking order in the harem, with the chosen empress having the highest position and the most of the emperor's grace. After the empress came the 3 wives, followed by the 4 royal consorts and the 9 royal concubines that were favored by the emperor. However, there is never any limit on the number of concubines the emperor could have, and the Forbidden City has been known to have housed as many as 50,000 women at a time, including the maids waiting on the concubines. However, it has been noted by Chinese historians that the maids of the wives and concubines sometimes have also discreetly enjoyed their fair share of divine grace of the emperor. All girls living in the Forbidden City were carefully secluded in the imperial quarters deep inside the palace. They were restricted to the inner court and forbidden from venturing out of their quarters. The concubines who gave birth to male children were elevated to imperial consorts, with the empress at the top of the hierarchy in the emperor's harem. There was an official system for selecting concubines to join the emperor's harem. The selection process would take place inside the Forbidden City every 3 years. Girls were selected as Xunu or elegant females for the court by a League of eunuchs traveling all over China, and the selection criteria ranged from emperor to emperor. Candidates ranged from 13 to 17 years of age and were chosen based on their background, virtues, behavior, character, appearance, and body condition. Most Chinese emperors perversely and obsessively chose younger girls, even as young as 12 years old. Many Chinese families wished their daughters to be chosen for the imperial emperor's grace, as the life of a concubine was viewed with envy as a life of pleasure, luxury, and power. However, concubines in the Forbidden City were just birds trapped in a gilded cage. The sole purpose of the women in the palace was serving the desires of the emperor and bearing his offspring. The written records have glamorized the aspect of sexual intrigue in the Chinese palace. The emperor would either pick one of his favorite concubines or leave the decision to the chief eunuch, who would locate the concubine and give her a note with the mark of emperor's grace. She would be taken to a royal bathhouse where she would be undressed, inspected and washed by the eunuch in incense, and she would wait for the chosen hour in her undressed state to ensure the safety of the emperor, as she could not carry any hidden blade or weapon in the folds of clothes. At the appointed hour, the chief eunuch would come and drape her in a blanket, and she would then be carried to the emperor's chambers, where the eunuch would unwrap her blanket for her to join the emperor in bed. The sheer number of concubines made it impossible for each of them to gain the attention of the emperor they desired. Many of the concubines spent their entire lives waiting for the opportunity till they had to be executed or banished at the death of the emperor without ever setting their eyes on their master. The women of the Forbidden City were subjected to the whims and fantasies of the emperor. The emperors, with a huge number of women at their beck and call, were drowned in their obsessive, perverse desires. Behind closed doors, they kept the concubines confined and many times subjected them to torture or beating, and controlled every aspect of their lives to suit their fantasies. In order to continue to control them even after their death, the emperors started the tradition whereby concubines would be killed, forced to commit suicide, or were buried alive alongside the dead emperor. It was a harsh fate to be born a girl in China. The perverse desires of the emperors, afflicted by the availability of omen around them, serving their every need, drove them into a life of debauchery and sin. The life of a concubine was marked with seclusion, endless waiting, despair, and at times torture and violence to serve the emperor's fancies. This drove many concubines to commit suicide in the Forbidden City. Stay tuned to find out more about how the eunuchs rose to immense power in Imperial China, liberating the past from the shackles of ignorance. This is Time Capsule. Please like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss out.